next we have Shah Donato from Kineta Inc. Kineta is a very interesting company. We just had Donald Dye send out a message about it. I'm sorry, Gary Genshy sent out a message about it, that it's presenting information about our novel anti-VISTA monoclonal antibody drug, which I believe works on hard tumors. Again, Sean, refresh me on you and your company. And where are you today, Sean? You are in Seattle?
In Seattle, in the office.
Perfect, great. So tell me, is it raining there, number one? And number two, tell me about the company and about your background, and let's go.
Sure. Well, I would say few sun breaks mixed with snow. So we are having a snowy year. And for all you skiers out there, I think we have the best ski pack in North America right now. So it's been a tremendous year. My background is I'm a scientist. I was the founder of Kineta and the chief scientist through 2016, after which I became the CEO. Prior to that, I had a PhD in genetics. That was my formal training. I worked on the Human Genome Project early in my career. I started a previous company here in Seattle, which was focused on innate immune drug products in the antiviral space. And that company was sold to Cubist in an M&A transaction, and it's now part of Merck. So Kineta actually includes many of our core team from that previous company. That company was called Illumigen Biosciences. My intellectual focus has always been in innate immunity and drug targets for activating or reducing the innate immune response in particular settings. A little bit of just our safe harbor statement, please make a note of that. So Kineta is a Seattle-based biotechnology company. We are really focused as a team on innate immunity. All of our scientists here are really professionals in this space, very knowledgeable here. One of the things that's interesting about the innate immune response, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is that it can be immunosuppressive or immunoreactive. So it can drive inflammation up, or it can reduce inflammation. So it serves as a bit of a governor on the overall immune system. And that's one of the reasons why it's a good target to exploit in different types of applications. In cancer, for example, which is one of our key areas, a lot of tumors are not properly inflamed. They aren't recognized by the immune system. So in those cases, we look at targets that can increase inflammation. In the neuroscience space, we're looking particularly at neuropathic pain or nerve injury pain, and there inflammation is a problem. So we're very interested in targets that can reduce inflammation in the innate immune system. I'm going to talk most today about oncology. Oncology is a principal focus of the company. We do have a lead product, which will be going into the clinic in solid tumor indications later this year, called KVA-12.1. It's a really very differentiated target. It focuses on a target which acts like a thermostat in the tumor, and really helps to block inflammation in the tumor, prevent the immune system from recognizing the tumor as foreign. And so we use this antibody to really enhance tumor infiltration of immune cells and drive reprogramming of the immune system to recognize that tumor. In addition to that, we have announced a couple of partnerships over the last 2 years, one with Pfizer in the immuno-oncology space, and a second one, which I'll talk about today, with Genentech Roche for a novel drug treatment for neuropathic pain. And this is a non-opioid treatment that really is strongly analgesic, but it also prevents inflammation around injured nerves. And that combination of effects is very interesting and I think drives a lot of value for this program. And we have a $360 million strategic partnership with Genentech to bring forward this drug as a commercial product. So in terms of our pipeline, again, a primary focus on immuno-oncology. I'm going to talk mostly today about VISTA. VISTA is that novel drug target, which we are exploiting in tumors to really shift the balance in those tumors toward a more inflamed state. In addition to that, I will talk about our partnered program, the non-opioid drug for the treatment of chronic neuropathic pain. Historically, we've worked in the antiviral space. My previous company was an innate immune-focused company in antivirals. So we do have one NGO partnered program for Lassa hemorrhagic fever. This is a small molecule drug to treat Lassa, Lassa being endemic in Western Africa. And we're partnered with the National Institutes of Health and the Wellcome Trust in the UK. We don't spend any investor dollars on the biodefense program. So the biggest commercial markets for us are really immuno-oncology and neuropathic pain. Immuno-oncology currently is the strongest global pharmaceutical biotech market. It's about 88 billion with really a handful of products in that market. This whole market has really emerged over the last 10 years, and it's growing pretty rapidly. There's strong pricing power in this market, and that's driving a lot of deal activity. So probably half of the VC-funded deals right now are in IO, and certainly half of the M&A transactions and half of the IPOs that have been done over the last 3 years involve companies in the IO space. So it's a good space for development and also for getting exits for investors. Another very interesting market is neuropathic pain. Neuropathic pain is a huge market. What's interesting about it is it's dominated by generics. And so there really aren't good patented medicines in this market right now. People are really reduced to using primarily opioids and gabapentinoids, which are all generic products. So there's a real opportunity to break into this market with something new and novel and drive pricing power and growth. Our principal focus is in cancer, and cancer is something that we're all familiar with. It's so common in the United States that within our own family, we will know one or more people who have had some type of cancer. The most common forms, of course, are shown here: prostate, lung, colorectal, and breast. Those are very, very common types of cancer. It's a major public health problem. There are approximately 2 million new cancer cases in the US every year, so new diagnoses. And that drives about 600,000 cancer-related deaths. So cancer is the second most common killer in the US after cardiovascular disease. So it's a major problem. That's one of the reasons why it's a strong commercial market. The other reason why it's a strong commercial market is that in many of these cancer types, we haven't had very good evolution to newer types of drugs, targeted therapies, IO therapies. So in many cases, when you have these types of cancers, you're being treated with drugs that are 40 or 50 or more years old. So there's a real opportunity for innovation. I talked a lot in the beginning about our focus in innate immunity. Innate immunity, it's good to think about innate immunity as the first responders of the immune response. It's something that occurs very early after infection or vaccination. You get this innate immune response, and the type of innate immune response that you get really drives that adaptive immune response. So the adaptive immune response could be an antibody response to a vaccine or a T cell response to a virus infection. That emerges over time, typically weeks. And in order to get that adaptive immune response, you have to have a properly programmed innate immune response. So that's what's driven our interest here in innate immunity. Also, there's a pretty wide competitive moat in the innate immune space. There aren't a lot of companies in this space globally. So it provides us a lot of opportunities still to exploit unexploited targets. Now, when we think about the company's VISTA program and in the context of cancer, we think about why an innate immune targeting cancer might be important and why we would want to exploit a particular drug target in the innate immune system in cancer. Historically, when we were treating cancers, especially cancers that were diagnosed early, radiation therapy, surgery, and chemotherapy have been adequate to lead to a cure. So cancer cures for early diagnosed cancers have been achieved using those conventional approaches, and that's still the case. The major problem in the field has been with patients who have been newly diagnosed with an advanced cancer. One of the areas where this happens very frequently is in lung cancer, where more than 50% of all of the patients who are diagnosed with lung cancer have already locally advanced or metastatic disease. And so in those patients, traditionally, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, and surgery haven't been very effective at achieving a complete response or cure. They do prolong life. Different therapies prolong life to a greater extent. But really, we haven't really presented anything there meaningfully with a cure. One of the reasons for that is that we haven't had effective immune therapy in those tumors. Those tumors are tumors that we call typically colder tumors. They're not well recognized by the immune system. And so when we try to apply an immune therapy there that would normally enhance the immune response, it doesn't work because those tumors are not readily recognized by the immune system. We think targeting VISTA can really change all that. So we think VISTA is a key factor in setting that colder tumor temperature. We think that by blocking the function of VISTA, we can begin to shift that balance toward more inflammation in the tumor and really allow us now to address some of those most difficult to treat cancers, like lung cancer, cancers of the gut, prostate, and so on. So this is just showing visually, how we approach treating these colder tumors. So there are lots of different types of colder tumors that aren't readily treated. Here we're showing an example of a lung tumor because, as I said, many of these people are diagnosed late. It's a colder tumor. It's harder to treat. And mostly what we're doing there is prolonging survival. But there are other cancers that are like this. I mentioned prostate, colon carcinoma, pancreatic, gastroesophageal, a couple of the gynecological cancers, ovarian and endometrial. So there are a number of different types of cancers that fit into this bucket. And these cancers are dominated by lots of immune cells in the tumor, but those immune cells are immunosuppressive. So they're blunting the immune response, and they're really preventing the immune system from getting in there, inflaming that tumor, and controlling its growth. And a lot of those immunosuppressive cells express this drug target, which we're focused on, called VISTA. So Kineta has developed a drug which blocks VISTA. And one of the things that we find when we do that is that we have less expression of VISTA in the tumor. The tumor itself, the number of cells that we find in there, begins to change. So we still have all of our tumor cells, but the complement of immune cells that is flowing into the tumor begins to change. And so we see more reactive pro-inflammatory immune cells. They're able to get in there. We see more T cells. They're starting to kill the tumor cells. So there's just generally greater inflammation in tumor when we block VISTA. And over time, we see tumors shrink in animal models that are treated with our anti-VISTA product. So we think really this is the key to unlocking this cold tumor problem and really shifting these particular tumors toward a more treatable type of tumor. And then we've been really able to show that initially in animal models. So what we're showing here are graphs of different types of tumors in animals. And these graphs are essentially all the same. They're looking at tumor volume, so the size of the tumor. And these tumors are both very aggressive tumors. In the left-hand panel, we're looking at melanoma. In the right-hand panel, we're looking at colon carcinoma. Typically, over a 3 to 4 week period, these tumors become so large that the animals need to be euthanized. And so a couple of interesting things about blocking VISTA. First, in the left-hand panel, which is a very cold tumor, a melanoma tumor, we're just treating with our anti-VISTA product, and you can see that just alone in that very cold tumor, blocking VISTA can help to reduce the growth of those tumors by about 50%. Which is very interesting when you compare the black circles with red diamonds. And then when we move into a hotter tumor model, one of the things we'd like to ask is in those hotter models where there are some other immunotherapies that work, which are shown there in blue. So these are things that are already clinically available to patients. They're immunotherapies that tend to work in hotter tumors. They're called checkpoint inhibitors. And we want to know, if we add our drug to those checkpoint inhibitors, does it really help to push some of these hotter tumors over the edge toward something like a complete response? And so in this colon carcinoma model, you can see that while an anti-CTLA-4, which is similar to a drug called Yervoy from BMS, or an anti-PD-L1, which is similar to a drug called Keytruda from Merck, they aren't able to completely block the growth of these tumors. But when you add in our drug to them in combination, you actually get a number of these animals who have complete tumor regressions. And that's the cure, that's the objective cure that we're really looking for. So we're able to show that our drug works alone. It also works really well in combination with existing checkpoint inhibitors. Now, I mentioned earlier that we do work in this innate immune space. So there isn't generally a lot of competition for our products. There are a handful of companies here that have filed patents or released meeting abstracts in the anti-VISTA space. We've certainly been able to take advantage of some of their learnings there. And I think overall have been able to make a better product with a more competitive target product profile than what these handful of competitors have been able to do. In terms of the market, we've modeled our market in terms of valuing our company really around 5 cancers where we think the anti-VISTA drug will work first. So that's colorectal, lung, ovarian, pancreatic, and prostate. That's that target patient population in the upper left-hand panel of this slide. And these, of course, would be people who have failed conventional therapy. So they would be individuals diagnosed with locally advanced metastatic disease, not receptive to surgery or radiation oncology or chemotherapy. They would have failed those prior lines and really need an immunotherapy in order to achieve cure. We estimate that total addressable market is about 500,000 people in the US, Europe, and Japan, which are the 3 largest pharmaceutical markets globally. And currently, drugs in this space are priced over 100,000. Our model is built around a conservative maximum price in the US of 85,000 in the lower right-hand panel. So when you think about the drug, we are taking this drug initially into the clinic in solid tumor patients in later this year, early next year. And we would expect to begin to get labeled marketed indications from regulators around the world in 2029 and 2030. And when you look at the market dynamics there, the 2 biggest markets for us initially are non-small cell lung cancer, which is that deep blue, and in colorectal cancer, which is that light blue. And so that's driving most of the revenue growth for this product, which really exceeds about $3 billion per year under this conservative model. So a very lucrative program for our company, a big driver of our valuation going forward, and really a very exciting program, I think, for patients and for investors. Just to mention about the timing here, generic competition can come into the pharmaceutical space at some point. We have filed our initial patents around these products. We expect to have patent exclusivity for this product through about 2041. So a long period, of patent exclusivity. So in terms of what we're doing in cancer, we're really trying to turn those colder tumors hot with a best-in-class immunotherapy that is addressing VISTA, an important target. We have that strong single-agent activity. It is complementary with other products. And we would expect to see peak year sales in the 3 largest markets of close to $4 billion. Now, we have done a couple of partnerships over the past 2 years. One I'm going to tell you a little bit about is KCP-506, which is a non-opioid treatment for chronic neuropathic pain. KCP-506 is currently in clinical trials in Europe. And this is a program that we've been able to partner with Genentech, who's been an exceptional partner for us. The opioid crisis in the US is something you all know very well. We have many chronic users of opioids, prescription generic opioids, for things like chronic lower back pain, workplace-related injury, and so on. This is a major public health problem. It's driving the overuse and accidental overdose with opioids of about 130 people every day in the US. One of the reasons this is happening is there just are not good alternatives to opioids. And so even in the injury setting where you're treating an opioid with an acute pain with an opioid post-injury or post-surgery, many people become addicted to those opioids and are taking them chronically because they transition to a chronic pain syndrome and they have no alternatives. This drug is different. It's analgesic. It's strongly analgesic in all of the different models that we've looked at. But one of the things that we notice, in particular in nerve injury models, is that there's less inflammation. There's less inflammation in the few weeks after the injury is introduced, fewer innate immune cells, fewer inflammatory cells. And so over time, those nerves look healthier because they're not being destroyed through inflammation. And we think that can help to prevent the evolution of those chronic pain syndromes. So that's a little bit about both our oncology products as well as the product that we're partnered with around Genentech. I thought maybe now would be a good time to bring my colleague, Craig Phillips, in, and he can tell you a little bit about the partnerships that we've done and what our business plan is on a go-forward basis.
Great. Thanks very much, Sean. This slide really is showing what the economics of the Genentech partnership look like. So this is the program we partnered with Genentech about 3 years ago. To date, we've received $21 million from Genentech. Genentech is fully funding this research program. So from an investor perspective, there's a lot of optionality and a lot of upside available to the investors, because obviously a new investor participates, in the economic benefits that Kineta would receive from this. So this is a great program, very investor friendly. In addition to these $350 million in milestones, we also have royalties where we get up to double-digit royalties on this program. And on the next slide, what I did is I wanted to show you kind of what the range of impact might mean for Kineta. So this is looking at the net proceeds that we would receive from this program. And it's kind of looking at a high bar and, a lower bar. But as you could see, we anticipate over the course of the next 5 years of, getting upwards of $50 to $80 million in revenue from this program. And that's important because we're making money on this program even before it makes it to the market because of Genentech paying these milestones. But then on the right-hand side of this graph, you can see what is really potential, where we're seeing, potential revenue of over $3 billion, $3.5 billion through the life of this program. As Sean was talking about patents, this is a patent protected program. So, we'll have market exclusivity for at least through 2039 for this drug program. On the next slide, just to provide a little perspective on our team, Sean and the scientific team, had a previous company, Illumogen, which they sold to Cubist in a, $340 million transaction. Cubist is now part of Merck. We also have, in addition to the scientific team, a group of pharma industry veterans like myself and Jacques Boucher with a lot of transactional and public company experience. But in addition to our internal team, we also have a really strong scientific advisory board. So we have an external group of advisors who really support us from the discovery stage through early clinical development. So it's a great group of people that really help to guide us through this process and contribute a lot of market intelligence into what we're doing as an organization. And I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes.
We have about 2 minutes left.
Perfect. Wanted to just comment on the biotech market. On the next slide, there's been a tremendous amount of biotech IPOs. We're seeing a lot of money coming into the marketplace. So very strong capital raise capability. On the next slide, looking at this is actually looking at the IPOs. Sorry, on the next slide, looking at the stage of development, where you're seeing Kineta is in the stage of development where we're seeing the 50% of the IPOs. So we're kind of in the right place at the right time. So it's a really positive place. And then I'm going to.
So is the strategy IPO or acquisition?
Yeah. And that's exactly right. So our plan is we have an open round right now of $10 million. And then our goal will be to IPO at the end of this year, beginning of next year, really on the strength of our research programs. So we're going to let
be an IPO in the US on a US exchange?
Yeah, we would. Most people are IPOing on NASDAQ, which is what we would anticipate doing.
Okay.
Yeah. And so on the next slide, just kind of quickly, we're seeing biotech IPO performance, up of over 50% on average, companies that IPO'd just last year. So very, very positive economic. On the next slide, we have a lot of really positive news flow. So, as a company, we're able to support a public market environment with a lot of significant value driving milestones over the course of the next number of years. So we think we're really well positioned to IPO. On the next slide, just in kind of trying to provide an indication, if we look at the net present value of our existing assets, so in other words, we don't add anything new, that would, and everything continues along at the current timeline, we'd be seeing an IRR of over 700% in 5 years. And it really picks up after that. Now, if we add to this, if we add another program to the mix, which frankly, we are planning on doing, that just is going to drive this even further. And so on the last slide, we do have an open round. We're raising $10 million. It's really to advance this VISTA program. It's a priced round at $220 a share. We would love to talk to some of you who are looking at kind of both sides. Tremendous opportunity for returns and also a really attractive market sector to be involved with, because as Sean was saying, there's a huge unmet need in cancer care, and we've really carved out a unique niche to establish some really innovative new medical options.
Great. Listen, there's actually some questions I think on chat. You probably want to address them. I think you guys did a great job, but my only recommendation is that in the future, please leave more time for discussion of financials. I just think it's pretty important in this world.
Great.
So I'll have other recommendations we can talk about offline. But great presentation. It's very informative. I mean, it's just too much. I know you guys have too much to discuss, right? So fantastic and great job. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
So.